5 predictions for the next 15 years. Well, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a fortune teller. So these are only predictions and it's for entertainment purposes only. So this is Info Rich and let's jump right in. My first prediction is going to be on Bitcoin. So you're going to ask why Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is the first peer-to-peer decentralized transaction system that was first used in 2009 but invented in 2008. Bitcoin stemmed from the faulty and rigged financial institutions and the adverse effects of the reliance on third parties. We can point out the '08 crisis as one of the last events that proved wherever there are humans, the system's core functionalities would depend on the emotions of individuals. Hence, the systems get entangled up. But way before 2008, which was the first time that Bitcoin was invented, and in the white paper, the name Satoshi Nakamoto was mentioned, in 1999, the author of From Zero to One and the companies like Palantir and PayPal, Peter Thiel, mentioned about the decentralized system, or at least one of the ways that we can at least engage in the decentralization of payments. But he was mostly talking about the currencies, where the reliance of currencies on the government will take its toll on the public. And the way to actually disengage from the governments or their harmful techniques would be to provide a system where they wouldn't be able to actually engage or monitor our transactions. And let's roll the video.
And in the developed world, will have an internet-enabled cell phone. And this sort of a cell, in China, the number is projected to go to something like 300 million cell phones, most of which will be internet-enabled. These people will have access to their bank accounts, and it will be very easy for them to move money into an account in a safe jurisdiction where the banks are not politically controlled, and they will basically be able to completely dollarize the economy. There will be no need to have any rubles or renminbi, and it will be non-traceable. No matter how illegal the Chinese Communist government says it is to hold US dollars, you will have a password on your cell phone, and the only way to stop this process would be literally to shut down the telecommunications network.
Some of the honorable mentions for the founders of Bitcoin are Nick Szabo, Hal Finney, Adam Back, and Nick Wright. Well, in one of the interviews of Tim Ferriss, who is one of my favorite people to listen to, Nick Szabo said this.
Oh no, I definitely go for a second layer. I mean, I designed Bitcoin Gold with 2 layers because...
Also lately, Elon Musk pointed out that he thinks Nick Szabo is the founder of Bitcoin. So what is the prediction you're going to ask? Well, Bitcoin continues to be self-sufficient, but the transfer processing and its duration are prolonged compared to the other cryptocurrencies. It could take up to an hour depending on the transaction fees. The elements that affect the transaction speed include block time, block size, transaction fees, and network traffic. Transaction speed points out the efficiency of the transfer of blocks. This component could most certainly affect the position of Bitcoin in the hierarchical structure and lead to the dethrone of Bitcoin as the #1 cryptocurrency. However, one of the most critical factors that keep Bitcoin at that spot is the people's reverence towards it, as it was the first one that revolutionized the space. Charles Hoskinson, the founder of Cardano, had this to say.
What is the incentive for the system to get more competitive? It's not. In fact, it's the opposite. They've turned it into a religion. I was in Miami at this Bitcoin conference there. I had a toilet paper roll thrown at me that had shitcoin written on it.
In my opinion, Bitcoin will still be relevant in 10 years. But with the up-and-coming contests from other projects where they have instant transaction speed, more versatile tools to offer, and more energy-preserving systems, as Bitcoin is predicated on the proof-of-work system, will take over the #1 spot. Stemming out of this revolutionizing idea, it seems to me that Bitcoin has become this deflationary asset that is hedged against the inflation hodled up by a bunch of millionaires. With this started to resemble more of the first argument, which was the dependency on human emotions, resulting in the price volatility due to the massive ownership of a couple of people, making it less adaptable as a payment system. Well, coming to the price prediction, no one can say anything for sure. Stock prices can be given a prediction price based on interest rates, inflation numbers, price to earnings, share dilution rate, and growth predictions along with sector-based PE ratios. But with Bitcoin or with other cryptocurrencies, there's nothing to base it on except for the updates and its offered blockchain technology. But how do we price this barrier-breaking technology? Well, like I said, no one could really say that, and neither can I. But In 15 years, this could be $1 million or $50,000. The second prediction, datum, which is data in Latin. I thought it would have sounded cooler actually. Data has been one of the most crucial elements for starting a company, finding a job, buying a house, or even dating someone. The importance of data gathering in our society will undeniably increase exponentially. Lately, companies like MetaBook, man, I need to change my jokes, have been under the microscope for exposing and selling individual information to third parties. Google is, for example, the biggest company in terms of data storage. But in my opinion, the future does not lie in knowing the information anymore. The old school way of memorizing the information and regurgitating, like I'm doing right now, is antiquated because the data is now within the reach of a click that will take you seconds. Now, the importance lies in what the question will be in the foreseeable future. If you know the answer to the problem that has not occurred yet, you take the throne. And for that, you need a lot of data to lay out the potential contested issues that may arise as a consequence of underlying potentials or problems. Again, this does not have to be a problem. This could be something that you want in the future, and the latter is already being done by companies like Amazon. Money will buy you things, but the data will buy you the future. And that is why the data-strong companies that can accumulate old data types will prevail as the future of innovations. Again though, this is not a financial advice. Third prediction, smart contracts. Decentralization is still at the beginning of its stage, and it mostly covers gaming, finance, and payment services. Still, all these are targeting institutional and retail investors if we were to highlight the echelon of its coverage. This is a photo taken from the Yalta Conference in 1945, where the three world leaders, Churchill, Stalin, and Roosevelt, met after the Second World War to rearrange the political conditions for the post-World War. One of the consequences of the discussion was to decide on the future of today's organization, called the United Nations. In discussions regarding the future of the United Nations, all parties agreed to an American plan concerning voting procedures in the Security Council, which had been expanded to 5 permanent members following the inclusion of France. Each of these permanent members was to hold a veto on decisions before the Security Council. Today, United Nations is considered the epitome of cooperation and mutuality. However, the signed agreements betwixt countries in this stage still lead to hiccups, to pitfalls. One country exiting the bilateral and multilateral contracts has been observed many times. There are some measures in place to prevent that from happening, like strongest of them are military, and the most used one is economic sanctions. Most of the time though, the repercussions are the decrease of trust vested into that country. One of the infamous ones that have taken a considerable part in the news was the Paris Climate Agreement. So what can smart contracts do? In my opinion, smart contracts can solve this problem by operating on a distributed ledger stored digitally by a preconceived algorithm stored in a blockchain. For example, say 2 countries have agreed on the terms and conditions, and the United Nations is the serving third party here that ensures both parties will rely on the terms and conditions that were agreed on. Now, the treaty that was signed is at risk of alternation, non-abidance, and the lack of actions of the United Nations if the first 2 take place. Thus, the agreement is susceptible to corruption, biases, or a third party's inability to take action and retrieve the collateral. Smart contracts are immutable, meaning that they can never be changed. And once one of the parties does not abide by the agreed condition, the smart contract will be automatically initiated and the terms will be applied. No one can tamper with it, and not a single individual can do anything about it, except for shutting down the internet. United Nations is as impartial as it can get, and this is the next stage for that. The reliance on someone's word will not be needed, as the chips will be on the table. We will see many more use cases for the appliances of smart contracts, not just with corporations, but within the international stage, within the next 15 years. Well, maybe not 15 years, but definitely in the near future. Self-driving cars and bots. This is definitely in my books. The future generation will look at us and think how crazy we are to drive a couple of tons of death machines that lead to many accidents. That is where self-driving cars come in. One of the leading companies behind is none other than Tesla. There are competitors on the horizon, definitely, which is a good thing for the market, as it will create competition and will breathe innovation. Self-driving cars can be observed even today, but they are sold to be relied on? Well, I don't know. they still need the driver to be in control. The increase of LiDAR technology, along with the algorithms that can predict the behavior of the pedestrians and other vehicles, will lead to this. But most probably, it will still need a driver with a driver's license, functioning much like a pilot. One of the most complex problems is the algorithm's prediction of future outcomes. They say that what makes a driver successful is expecting the possible outcomes. For an entirely self-driving car, they need to get around with the perception problem. The perception problem is defined by the phenomena of perceptual illusion and hallucination. And the question is, if these kinds of errors are possible, how can perception be what it intuitively seems to be, direct and real? So, for example, say that a self-driving car can see the pedestrian approaching the road, but if the pedestrian starts to run out of nowhere towards the road, the algorithm needs to get around this problem. Some actions conducted by humans are unpredictable outside of the scope of the perceived, and for this technology to get to the next phase, it needs to solve this issue. In one of the Lex Fridman's interview that he had with Elon Musk, this is what they had to say about this issue. I also linked it down below if you want to check out the video.
So you have to solve the perception problem, like detect, and then you first realize what is the perception problem for driving, like all the kinds of things you have to be able to see. Like what do we even look at when we drive?
Furthermore, the next thing that we'll be seeing is bots doing daily repetitive tasks, such as grocery picking, delivery, and dishwashing. Elon Musk laid out a project for this called the Tesla bot. However, conceiving this project may take more time, and I assume that projects like Boston Dynamics can offer robots that will enable this. Also, I'm going to include this in more detail in another video. For example, here's a cool video of a robot doing handstands. Fifth and final prediction, Dfake. You may have heard or seen this one, a Dfake video of Tom Cruise being Tom Cruise.
One, I don't drink. Two, I fly on the side of the plane outside. Oh. What?
Okay. Dfake technology seems very benign now, as it is only for entertainment purposes. But what if it comes down to this? Indeed, if it goes like this, politicians, business people, and influencers will have to get their check marks for every video, just like those you see on Twitter and YouTube. Because this could bring confusion and unaccounted actions, resulting in dangerous and malicious activities. I had many more topics to add on today's video, such as decentralized autonomous organization, the Tesla bot, decentralized social media platforms, but I will make sure to cover those in my next videos. So that was that. You were listening to Info Rich. This is Hassan, and remember, always be good to yourselves. What if another civilization produced these sophisticated robots but had to leave the planet because they became more dangerous? And we're now making these machines that will follow the same pattern?